Lucy Ann Hurston, the niece of Zora Neale Hurston, has produced and hosted 2 documentaries about her famous aunt and directed the first high school production of Zora's play, Mulebone. A professor of sociology at Manchester Community College in Manchester, Connecticut, Lucy Ann Hurston is also the author of Speak, So You Can Speak Again, The Life of Zora Neale Hurston, an acclaimed volume featuring rare photographs and audio recordings of Zora Neale Hurston, as well as reproductions of her manuscripts and letters in her own hand. I want to tell you, it is indeed my pleasure to introduce Lucy Ann Hurston.
Let me share with you first how it is that I met Zora and her infamous work, Their Eyes Were Watching God. Now, for my own protection, I would like to know the proximity of everybody in the room who has anything to do with the library. Raise your hands. Really high. Oh, there's a lot of you. Okay, so, Alma, you just protect me, girl, okay? All right. So here I was, 9 years old. This is your first story of the day. Here I was, 9 years old, an avid reader, okay? I, in fact, at 9, by the time I was 9, had collected and created my own library in my home in Brooklyn, New York, Bed-Stuy. 55 Hull Street in Brooklyn, New York. I had my own little shelf in my bedroom with my books. And I had a little stamp with an ink pad, okay? And I had taped little squares of toilet paper to the back of the book so that I could check them out when I wanted to read them, and check them back in when they came back. No, I was serious. I was serious. I was a librarian. And this was my library. My library held books like my collection of Nancy Drew, the Bobbsey Twins, and the Hardy Boys. Right? I had about 11 books. A lot of stamping going on. When I was about 9, my parents deemed me old enough to walk from our home, 55 Hull Street, to the Brooklyn Public Library. Now, I went to private Catholic all-girls school, right? Which left me with some issues, if anybody's been to Catholic school with nuns, right? Left me with some issues, and left me with absolutely wonderful penmanship. Yes, that's when penmanship was a subject for the nuns, okay? And so, at the end of every school year, you were allowed to keep your books. And so I would spend my summers completing, because with every subject you had a workbook that was about this big, that you spent about 2/3 of the year completing 2/3 of the work in it. So I spent the balance of the summer completing that 1/3 of the workbook for fun. While my siblings were out doing double Dutch and all this stuff, I was inside doing long math for fun, diagramming sentences for leisure work, okay? Diagramming the cell, all the parts of the cell and all the parts of the eyeball. I was in love with schoolwork. I was in love with books. Well, I would read and reread all of the books that I had. And as I grew, when I reread them, I would find different things in them. But even I, with my wonderful imagination, got bored. And finally, I was allowed to go to the library, and I could check out books, and I could travel the world. Okay? Nancy Drew was no longer top of the list, okay? But the Brooklyn Public Library, and here's where watch the librarians start going crazy, all right? Those of you sitting next to library people, just restrain them for me, okay? So here was what I thought was the arrangement with the Brooklyn Public Library. I would go, and I would check out 5 books, and I would bring them home, and I would read 5 books. And of those 5 books, if I really, really, really liked 3 of them, I would return 2. See how this went? And then I would check out 5 more. The next week, I'd read 5, like 3, keep 3, return 2. And this worked really well, week after week after week, okay? Check out 5, read 5, like 1, keep 1, return 4. And my library was just growing at home, right? Until that one Saturday when I walked to the library, and I went to check out books, and I put my books on the counter, and this really little evil person said, Hurston, Lucy, this was when we had library cards, and they went to the little Rolodex thing, right? And they went through it. Hurston? Lucy? No, and she reached out. I remember the motion. She reached out and she slid the books back. And she said, your library privileges have been suspended. And I said, fine. I don't need your books. It's really arrogant, okay? And so I went home with no books. When after about 24 hours, I was jonesing for a book, man. Need a book, need a book. And I knew where there were some books, and they were in the attic of our house at 55 Hull Street in boxes which belonged to my father. Boxes which I had well been told many times not to bother with, all right? But I already knew from the nuns that, I was going to hell anyway, right? I'm going big, man. I went up to the attic on the top floor of our house on Hull Street, and I opened these dusty boxes, and I found these wonderful books. They were books that were hard-covered, but they were cloth. And the pages were thick and hard and yellow. Now, this is where the librarians start switching, okay? Hold them down for me, okay? And as you turned the pages, they were so old, the corners would just snap off. And I remember sitting and reading one of these books because I found it very interesting that the book, when you're 9, it's all about you, okay? That the book had an author whose last name was the same as mine, all right? She had my name. I didn't have hers. She had my name. And I sat there and I started reading this book that had commas and such in it. You had to say the words aloud to figure out what was going on. And it was beautiful. It was like reading in a foreign language. It was wonderful. And in 3 days' time of going up to the attic and hiding in the dirt, in the dust, with the spiders, and I don't like spiders. I would sit there and I would, in 3 days, read this entire book. Now, what do you do after you read a really good book? You tell somebody you have to talk about it, right? You have to dissect it. You have to share it. You have to ask questions. When you read it, what did you see? I had to come and tell my father, I have some questions for you, okay? And then after all the beating and crying and screaming and stuff was done, right? We spent the next 30 years in conversation about my Aunt Zora.
She shares, or rather, she kills off all of the menfolk in her life. That was, in fact, a liberation kind of thing that I see. Would you expound on that, please?
Yes, before I kill you. I think that we'll talk specifically about the men in Their Eyes Are Watching God versus the real men in her life. Zora was married and divorced 3 times. Let me put that out there, okay? Because the husbands wanted to turn her into just what the men in Their Eyes Are Watching God wanted to turn her into. And she wasn't having it. At a time when to be considered successful as a woman meant to be a wife and a mother, okay? And that's still so much a part of what is relegated and dumped upon young women today. I have 2 sisters and a brother. I'm the only one to graduate high school. I've written books. I'm a college professor. And my mother goes to bingo. Before I was recently married, my mother goes to bingo, and she would say, yes, then there's Lucy, she's doing that teaching thing because she's not married. And she would just, and all the little bingo ladies would go, oh. I'm like, really? And she would say to me, Lucy, while you still have your looks, come on, you. And it's still this burden that we are who we marry. Okay, I have a colleague of mine, Valerie Wilson now, who used to be Valerie Keir, who's Dr. Keir, a geographer, Dr. Keir, and she got married, and she's now Mrs. Wilson. It cost her degree to get married. But the idea that, you have to give up, besides your name, everything that you are about and become the property of, okay, was the problem that Zora had with the men in her lives, with her siblings. The younger siblings, not so much because they didn't know her and the norms of the time, but her older siblings, used to give her hell. Okay, Zora, enough of this running around stuff, and searching and hunting and anthropology and schools and books and travels. It's time to get married. And, it's time to settle down. And there was something wrong with her if she didn't settle down, okay? So to look for a partner that takes you for who you are, that not only will take you for who you are, but will help you be who you are, okay? That's what we want, okay? And I told my husband, we're good together because he's stupid enough to let me be who I am. I think that the problem was Zora loved herself much more than anybody else around her and was going to do the best for herself, no matter what others thought.
How does it feel? That's like a mantle and like a crown, but it's also like a burden you have to carry when you have such a famous name in your history and your background, and it's like the eyes are always on you too. Mm-hmm. Like, what are you going to do? So I'll just get some feedback about that.
Okay. It is difficult. It's scary. When I was in graduate school, okay, first let me tell you about my education. We've got 3 more hours. I love telling stories. I graduated high school. I turned 16. My birthday's April 1st. I turned 16 April 1st and graduated high school in May. And nobody said go to college. And so I went to work, right? And then the next year I got married. The following year I had a baby. The next year I had a divorce. Got that out of the way, all right? And when I was 31, I had started writing short stories, and they started selling. And I thought, well, let me go to the community college, that great last Sebastian of education for non-traditional age people. Give it up for the community college, all right? I went to Manchester Community College because of the 12 community colleges in the state of Connecticut, I had heard that that was the best one. So I went there to take an English class, right? Graduated number 2 in my high school class, right? But nobody said go to college. So I went to the community college. They took me in the back room with the rubber hose, beat the crap out of me because they said they had scholarship money and they wanted me to go full time. And I said, don't waste that on me because I'm 31. I'm over the hill. I'm 54 right now and I'm hot as hell, okay? I meant hot. Okay, I meant both, all right? But I said, I'm 31, don't waste the... They forced me to go, and I went to Manchester Community College, and my first semester I took 5 classes, and I got 5 A's, all right? Yeah. And so I was inducted into Phi Theta Kappa, the Honor Society. And the next semester I was inducted into Alpha Nu Gamma, the Foreign Language Honor Society for Spanish. And I finished my associate's degree in general studies there, graduating with honors, handed off to the State University, where I earned my bachelor's degree in sociology, Central Connecticut State University, and a triple minor in women's studies, anthropology, and African American studies, because I'm just greedy as hell. Okay? I wanted it all. And then I received a presidential fellowship to go to the Ohio State University. Once you're an alum, you have to say the, right? I went to the Ohio State University and hated it, because here was Manchester Community College, and here was the State University, and then here was, the Ohio State University, largest land-grant university in the country. Hated it. Things they didn't tell you in the beautiful glossy view book. Columbus, Ohio is the national headquarters of the new KKK. Yeah, so on the steps of Bricker Hall, the sociology department, is where they had their KKK recruitment rallies. And I would stand there and get bruised shoulders while my cohort members would blow by me, running to sign up for the new KKK. And I used to always burst their parties because I was like the only black person that attended the KKK recruitment rallies. And I always called for the sociological studies. So, tell me, all right? And so I left there after my master's and came back to the East Coast where the normal folk live and went to UMass Amherst for my doctoral studies in cultural anthropology and went finished all my coursework and then got busy writing this little book thing instead of the dissertation, which was so much more fun, right? But I put this off for so long, excuse me, because I didn't want to write this in my name, because I have an extreme amount of respect for the ZNH, okay? And I didn't want to be the next Hurston to put pen to paper. I was scared to death, okay? However, I wrote the book. It came out in October, and by the January after, it received the American Library Association's award for best contributions to publishing. The librarians will tell you that's like our Oscar, okay? That's our Emmy, you know. So, yeah, it is. It's a burden to constantly be on guard, on watch for the protection of her works. Okay, they raped, robbed, and pillaged her while she was alive with not giving her due, and then they proceeded to do so after she passed. And so, you know, I'm the gatekeeper now, okay? You have to deal with me, okay? So it's an honor, it's a privilege, it's a weight, okay? But I'm humbled, you know, I'm humbled.
I have always been extremely proud of being a black woman. I don't know what, I haven't been anything else, but it just gives me so much glory and pride. And so when you said you had a granddaughter, that's what I wanted you to say. So what is the story? What is the first story for her from you?
My son, her father, is an Army guy, so he's been, you know, ruined by the United States Army, okay? You know, he's like devoid of emotion, and, you know, he's been in Afghanistan, and, you know, and he's a soldier. His wife, my daughter-in-law, Karen, is a good little radical feminist, okay? Her mother, Jackie, is a community college professor who teaches early childhood education, having been educated at Wesleyan in women's studies, whose master thesis happens to be. So she and I get along swimmingly well, okay? So when Anthony, my son, comes home with the little plastic kitchen set for her, you know, the little refrigerator and the sink and the stove that she'll be tied to for the next 55 years of her life, I bring over the little workbench with the hammer and the screwdrivers and her little tool belt and her little Home Depot apron. Yeah, man. Okay? So there's this balance that she has to bear, to be all things and to find what's of her calling to do. And my job is to wedge myself right in the middle of their relationship and make sure that she has the room to find herself. Her first story will be Spunk.
Your eyes are watching God was my introduction to Zora Neale Hurston. Mm-hmm. But my favorite is Moses, Man of the Mountain.
Oh, thank you.
I'm just wondering, does she have a concept of God that works its way through all of her writings? I'd like to hear a little bit more about that.
Thank you. And that's a very good point. That she does. You will find several themes, okay, through much of her writing. She's the daughter of a black Baptist minister, okay? So the issue of religion and its importance to black communities and black families and black units is there, okay, through much of her work. We talked about what you said was this man-hating thing going on. It wasn't so much a man-hating thing. It was women damn tired of men hating them, okay? And so the dangerous thing about Zora's work, right, is that even within this spiritual concept, she lets women win, okay? If you look at her folk tales, where animals are talking, even the women animals win, okay? Now, what's dangerous about that? What you have is, for the first time, a woman author that writes a book where the female protagonist does not die happily after giving birth to her 75th child, does not go joyfully into the shadows as Mrs. So-and-so in the property of, okay, does not bear the penance, the lightning bolt from God for daring not to get married, but yet what you have is a female character that tries a little bit of that, tries a little bit of that, and then falls in love with a younger man, okay, telling women, you know what, you could do it all, you could have it all, you could do it all, you could do nothing, you could do whatever the hell you please. Kind of a dangerous story theme, don't you think? Okay? Very empowering and dangerous. All right? And she does so through religion, through folk tales with animals, by representing those animals as people, as women being the mules of the world. And they still rise. I think my father was just waiting for me to be ready to handle what he had to tell me about Zora. I pushed his hand, okay, and I found her before he was ready. Clearly at 9, I was ready. At 9, I could read and understand and came equipped with a bunch of questions, you know. So was that Zora reaching out to me? You don't know. I mean, you have to wonder about these things, you know. As long as this book has been out, as many big reads as there have been, Zora's book has been on the big read list from the very first time that they offered those grants. Every year, someone somewhere in the United States, several people, apply for and get the grant for Their Eyes Are Watching God. And finally, after all the years of the big read, I'm here. Cannot be an accident. Miracosta College and North County African American Women's Association can't make joint mistakes like that. It's been an absolute pleasure. I've enjoyed your company. Thank you so much.